Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with modern jazz pianist and composer Nick Sanders on his newest 2019 CD called Playtime 2050. This is his third release with his inventive trio, and he looks to the future with a unique combination of an imaginative complexity and dark humor. It's again another clear evolution of his sound that blends influences from a wide swath of jazz history with concepts that go from contemporary classical music and the composer's offbeat perspective of everything. He's joined by Henry Fraser on bass and Connor Baker on the drums, and you're going to dig it, so get to know him, this project, and dig this interview, my friends.
So, Nick, first of all, it's been great to reconnect with you. Thank you for taking another minute out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. My pleasure.
So, you know, it's always fun to kind of dive into kind of a post-apocalyptic, futuristic look at, like, how the world works through an artist's view. And this album is pretty stark when you open it up and you look at it and see the girl with the mask. So Playtime 2050, talk to me about what this project has meant for you and what the artistic vision of it was.
The music itself is all original music, that's a first for me. My past records I did, my past two trio albums, those were also majority original music, but I had a couple of covers on there. And then the duo record with Logan Strassel called Pianist had some originals, but a lot of classical music covers and some jazz stuff too, like some Monk stuff and others, Thelonious Monk and stuff. So Playtime 2050 is, it's all my music. So the cover art was done by Leah Saunier, and she's the artist who also did the artwork for my second record called You Are a Creature. So it's actually the same artist. The name of the painting that's on the cover is actually called Playtime 2050. I was kind of considering other titles, and actually I had a couple other covers of artwork that I was considering using. But then I kind of went to her website and checked out her art again because I loved You Are a Creature, and her artwork was great. And because that painting for You Are a Creature was called The Contortionist, and that was her stuff. So, but anyway, I went to her website and looked at her art, and I saw this image, and I thought that it was just great. I really loved it, and I thought that it was a really good kind of visual for my music, or at least on this record. It wasn't necessarily like a super literal thing necessarily about like the end of the world or something with like, you know, I don't know, some sort of climate change or something kind of statement. It wasn't meant to be like a political statement or anything like that. But I just thought that it was a really fantastic image that aligned with the artistic sound and nature of my music, at least the way that I kind of see it. I think that another reason I chose it as the cover art, because I think the cover art was really important. Obviously, there's no lyrics in my music. So, of course, when you look at it, this is the only kind of visual thing that people can see. It wasn't necessarily meant to be any kind of political thing, but it was, more of something that aligned with the artistic nature of my music. And I think that the image itself just really stands out, and I just really love the way that it looks. And I think that it's kind of, on the face of it, it's very kind of serious and, like you said, stark. But then also there's kind of an element of, you know, she's holding a stuffed animal, and it kind of looks kind of funny in a way because the stuffed animal is wearing the mask as well. So there is an element of like dark humor and kind of like tongue-in-cheek as well to it. You could even maybe say sarcasm, but in some, if you want to take it that way. And I just think that some of my music has those, or a lot of my music rather has elements of that. And so yeah, that would be my explanation, I guess, in terms of the artwork and how it relates to my music. But then, you know, talking about the music itself, this for me is the most variety in terms of my compositional output that I've produced. So in terms of like there's a lot of different things going on, like especially with the prepared piano stuff. I even did a 13-bar blues. It's called the fourth track on the album, called Prepared for the Blues. It's a 13-bar blues which has a couple of notes that I actually put like nails in the strings and this kind of stuff. The prepared piano stuff was kind of inspired by John Cage and some other people as well. But yeah, I think that there's and then there's a ton of not a ton, but there's a good amount of through composed music. Like the fifth track, Still Considering, which is a ballad, is completely written out. The last track, number 2, Longfellow Park, is completely through composed. And also the interlude for SLD, there's a very short solo piece that I composed, is another piece that is through composed. So there's a lot of different stuff. I mean, I have stuff there where there's heavy improvisation, like, for instance, Prepared for the Accident, track 12 is completely improvised. And there's a ton of, Manic Maniac and Live Normal, the number 3. So, and Endless, there's a lot of the tracks on there that it has kind of like the more traditional solo head. The title track, so Playtime 2050, is the only real, like, I would say, quote-unquote, jazzy swing tune on the album. I guess you could say the blues is a little bit too, but I would say that Playtime 2050 is very much more mainstream jazz, swinging and a pretty simple head. It has a little bit. The B section is a little different, but I thought it would be a good title track for the album because I think it's the only swing tune, and I don't think I've really done that before, where I've made the title track to be super swinging and more like kind of in kind of like modern bebop. And I just thought that would be a really kind of funny, a funny thing to do, because a lot of my music is very classically influenced, and also just more kind of in the vein of, like, I don't know, I guess you could say like Chris Davis or Craig Taborn and people like that, or like Paul Bley or something. So yeah, that's kind of my explanation for the music itself. And also the 10th track, Hungry Ghost, was actually, it's almost 3.5 minutes long. That was also a piece that was completely through composed. So yeah, there's just a lot of angles that I'm coming to in this album. And in terms of the interaction with the trio, I think that this is kind of the ultimate statement from this particular group of my music. It's all my music, and I think it's kind of, we've been playing together for a long time, and I think that this record is kind of the culmination of the last album for some time that I'm going to do with this band, because I just want to kind of move on to other artistic ventures in terms of my music and composition. I may very well revisit it in the future with this particular group, but I really am super happy with it. I'm like super pleased with how it came out, and I think the playing is the best that we've done, and it's definitely the most honest representation that we've been able to achieve. So I'm really happy with how it came out.
Right on. So what do you want the listener to get out of this experience? When they get this album and they really wrap their ears around it, how do you want them to feel after they're done?
That's a good question. Yeah, I thought about this for sure. For me, there's so many different things on this album in terms of composition and improvisation. And, another thing too is that there's 13 tracks, and they're all fairly short, which was intentional, because I kind of wanted to show as much compositional and improvisational facets to my musical worldview that I could. I think that certain people might like certain tracks, that, what their style of music they like. Certain tracks might align more with their interest or what they like. I think that if a listener can come away from listening to it with just a sense of hearing something different and that they haven't maybe experienced before in jazz or improvised music, that would be great, and I think that I have a lot of music on here that is pretty avant-garde, I would say, in terms of like mainstream jazz audiences, but then I think I have a lot of stuff that is extremely tonal and definitely coming from a more tonal, kind of, you could say, romantic or more modern classical foundation. In that sense, I think I would hope that they could get something out of it in terms of having a feeling, certain feelings from listening to that kind of stuff as well. So, as long as they feel something and it's not just kind of, they don't feel like, well, I've heard this before and this is just like another trio album that's like, just sounds like everything that's come before. I mean, that's definitely not what I'm going for. And I hope that they can come away with it, from it, hearing something interesting and something that's, maybe made them kind of think a little bit or kind of have to work a tiny bit, just to try and understand or to feel a specific emotion from the music, as opposed to just kind of like putting on an album and it just basically being like wallpaper or something. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
And that's something that I really, I'm in this whole thing for the long haul, and I know that I'm doing something pretty different, I think, and I know that in terms for mainstream jazz audiences, quote unquote, it might not be the most accessible right off the bat, but I wouldn't have it any other way, honestly. Frankly, I've listened to a lot of jazz music that's being put out right now, and while I think the playing is great, I think a lot of it is, it's pretty kind of essentially regurgitations of what has come before, with not very much, I know this is a harsh criticism, but that's how I see it. So, if I can make the listener, kind of step outside of their comfort zone a little bit, and that would be awesome. And that's kind of and that's what I think the spirit of jazz is about, I think that, if you look at all these people that have come before, like Miles Davis and Charlie Parker and John Coltrane is a great example, where he was playing he was playing bebop basically, like more like post-bop stuff. And then at the end of his career was doing like way out, like super free music basically. I think that the spirit of jazz is about pushing music forward and trying to do stuff that's new, and trying to it doesn't have to be, of course, it doesn't have to reinvent the wheel, but I think that it's important to try to push the music forward and make someone feel something different or unique, or at least a deep emotion that they can grasp onto, as opposed to just kind of like, well, this is really nice, this is really nice and it's pleasant.
Absolutely.
And kind of just like in the background, So, yeah. That's
Absolutely.
what I about it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a great explanation. And Nick, thank you for opening up about the album and all the parameters that went into it. It's a great listen, and I hope that everybody out there listening to this picks it up and gives it a listen and digs it just as much.
Yeah, awesome. Joe, thank you so much for having me on the show, and it's an honor to be able to present my music in this way on your show, so I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Kansas City, New York City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Nick for his time, his music, and yet another album. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.